the judgment, the potential judgment, next judgment of a spurious, rather political foreign court matters more than the issue of national sovereignty. And you boast that President Biden likes this deal. Now, the Speaker earlier on said that this House should not be affected by elections that take place in foreign countries. But I wonder, how confident are you, if the 47th President of the USA becomes Donald Trump, that he will approve of this deal, given the importance of our relationship with America?
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his question. Let me reassure him that we have sought to take views across the US political establishment. But I do say to him, to get a US president, a US Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Defence applaud this agreement should reassure him that the US would do nothing that would help our enemies, particularly the Chinese.
We saw a previous Labour government sell off this country's gold. We now have a Labour government that is surrendering our sovereignty and giving away our territory. On the specific point of the Chagosians, I'd like to ask the Foreign Secretary if and when he's had any specific discussions with the Chagosian people as part of these negotiations.
I've got to say, I am not going to take lectures from a party that left us a 22 billion black hole! A 22 billion black hole!
When Mauritius was granted independence, they agreed, as part of that deal, to relinquish all claims to this British sovereign territory that we've owned since 1814, the Treaty of Paris. Why do you see fit to do a deal with a nation that has reneged on a previous deal? And why are we selling a sovereign asset of great value that we all agree for no money up front? We're paying them. It's negligent.
Because we've done a deal that secures the security of the global community. And I've got to say, I can't recall if the honourable gentleman is legally qualified, but I've got to tell him that we found ourselves with no one supporting our claim in the family of the UN and the rules-based order. And for that reason, the last government began these negotiations, and it's been absolutely right that we conclude them.
The Mauritian government is guilty of vast human rights abuses, locking up other politicians who were independent, and also the Black Creole Mauritians were literally traduced by that government. We've handed to them, therefore, the rights over what the Chagosians have never agreed to. So my question to him is really, why was this a rush just before their election? They will use this now to benefit themselves in the re-election process. Why do we do that? To support a disgusting government in league with the Chinese?
I say to the right honourable gentleman, who has immense experience in this House, and this House knows that sometimes across the floor one's able to strike up friendships and we're fellow Spurs supporters. But let me say to him that this is a country that is part of our Commonwealth. And so I can't possibly associate myself with the remarks that he just made. This was an important... let us be clear that I think it is a matter of regret what was done to the Chagosians back in the 1960s. That has been a sore that has run through our relations with Mauritius, but also with substantial parts of the global south, and that is why we have struck this agreement and continued negotiations. I remind him, 11 rounds. He may well have disagreed with the last government, but 11 rounds that they undertook.
The old principle that we used to apply was the Wilson principle, the principle of self-determination, that the Foreign Secretary may remember is the defence of the Falkland Islands, the defence of Gibraltar. He's now just violated that principle by undermining the rights of the Chagosian people in favour of a claim that was abandoned in 1965, never really made, because it was only administrative and never properly governed from Mauritius anyway, and in favour of a court whose judgment was advisory. He sold out the sovereignty of the British people. Truly, nobody apart from a boy called Jack has ever made a worse deal on the way to market. He's come back with a handful of beans that he's trying to sell as a prize.
I've got to say, I have always admired the honourable gentleman's eloquence, but I haven't always admired his principles. He was part of the last government. Did he raise this when he was part of the last government? Did he make it a resignation issue? No, he didn't, because he knows we inherited this and we had to make a deal.
We've just handed sovereign British territory to a small island nation which is an ally of China. Yes. And we are paying for the privilege. Yep. All so that the Foreign Secretary can feel good about himself at his next North London dinner party. In whose interests does he think he serves? Those of the global diplomatic elite, or those of the British people and our national interest?
Well, I hope that question may have garnered him a few more votes, but if that's his position, he's unlikely to lead the Conservative Party to victory. This deal secures the base. It is in our national interest.
This abject surrender of British sovereign territory for nothing, for that's what it is, now risks a Chinese veto over an absolutely vital military facility. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary, how much in rent will this country now pay Mauritius for the right to lease back what's already ours, and which government department, the MOD or the FCDO, will pay the landlord?
The honourable gentleman mentions the Chinese veto. The Chinese do not have a veto in this House. The treaty will be scrutinised by this House. All members will be able to look at it. All members will be able to debate it and reflect on it. And of course, at the time of publishing the treaty, there will be a discussion of the costs. But I say to him, no basing agreements ever discuss costs, because that would damage our own national security, and this government's not prepared to do that.
Can I just describe the Right Honourable Gentleman as hopelessly naive? Has he not seen how the rule of law, the rule of international law across the world, is collapsing under the challenge from Russia, Iran, North Korea and China? And given a few flimsy pieces of paper, how much does he think that China or any of those other countries will respect it after we have given up the principle that this is British sovereign territory?
I've got to say, up against a tough geopolitical environment in which Russia, Iran, North Korea and China are far from playing by the global rules, it's hugely important that this country is a country that supports the rules-based order, and it's hugely important that this facility has been secured for longer than anybody else in this Parliament is able. That is what we've secured, and I have to say, I trust the judgment of our closest ally, not the honourable gentleman.
The Foreign Secretary must commit to allowing the Chagosians, the British Chagosian people, the right of self-determination, just as we afford to every other British overseas territory. Are the people of Chagos Islands less worth than the Falkland Islanders or the Gibraltarians or any other British overseas territory? Will he commit to allow the people of the Chagos Islands to decide their own destiny?
I think the honourable gentleman knows better than this, having chaired the all-party group on Mauritius. He knows that these discussions begun under the last government. He also knows, and will have read the ICJ judgment, he knows that it's important that this deal was struck. The last government left it to us to do, and we did it, and we're proud of it.